Just when Ben thought he was giving Rose a chance at a better life, her unexpected revelation turned his world upside down. He never knew existed were about to rewrite his destiny. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Ben Carter, a man who appears to have it all. At 38, he is the epitome of success, an astute businessman with a fortune that most people can only dream of. His mansion, perched on a hill overlooking the city, is a symbol of his wealth. A sprawling estate with grand chandeliers, polished marble floors, and countless rooms filled with opulence. Outside, a fleet of luxury cars gleams under the morning sun. To the world, Ben is a man who has conquered life. But inside the grandeur lies an unbearable emptiness. The mansion, though grand, is eerily quiet. Its vast halls echo with nothing but his own footsteps. Servants scurry about, careful not to disturb their employer, who prefers silence to conversation. The luxury that surrounds him feels hollow, unable to mask the void in his heart. Ben's success comes with a dark secret. He cannot have children. This fact has become his greatest sorrow and shame, a burden he carries in silence. In his high society circles, where family legacies are prized above all else, Ben feels inadequate. At family gatherings, relatives whisper behind his back. Some pity him, while others mock him, their cruel remarks cutting deeper than they realize. He pretends not to care, but every joke and judgmental look chips away at his already fragile self-worth. Loneliness grips Ben tightly. He spends his nights pacing his luxurious home, staring at the portraits of his ancestors on the walls, each one a reminder of the lineage he feels he will never continue. The weight of societal expectations presses down on him, making him question the value of his success. What good is wealth, he wonders, if there is no one to share it with? No one to carry his name forward? This chapter ends with Ben at his breaking point. One morning, overwhelmed by his thoughts, he decides to leave the confines of his mansion. He grabs his car keys and drives aimlessly through the city, desperate for a distraction, a glimmer of something different. The reader is left with a sense of anticipation as Ben's journey toward change begins. Little does he know, the chance encounter that awaits him will alter his life forever. Ben drives aimlessly through the city, his luxury car gliding through quiet suburban streets. He isn't looking for anything in particular, just an escape from the oppressive weight of his thoughts. The world outside his mansion feels foreign to him, yet oddly comforting in its simplicity. After passing rows of modest homes and small businesses, his eyes catch sight of a quaint little cafe tucked into the corner of an unremarkable street. It's the kind of place he would normally overlook, but something compels him to stop. The cafe is a far cry from the high-end restaurants he frequents. The exterior is modest, with a hand-painted sign that reads, Rose's Corner Cafe. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wafts through the air as he pushes open the door, the soft chime of a bell announcing his arrival. Inside, the space is warm and inviting, with mismatched furniture, potted plants on windowsills, and handwritten chalkboard menus. The hum of quiet conversation and the clinking of cups create a peaceful atmosphere, worlds apart from the sterile silence of his mansion. As he takes a seat by the window, Ben observes the room. It's filled with ordinary people, young couples sharing a laugh, an older man reading a newspaper, a mother comforting a crying baby. This slice of normal life feels foreign to him, almost like stepping into a different universe. His attention is drawn to a woman behind the counter, moving briskly as she serves customers. She's in her mid-30s. Her face, though marked by tiredness, carries a quiet strength and warmth. Her name tag reads Rose Walker. She greets each customer with a smile, her voice calm yet confident, even as she juggles multiple tasks. When she finally approaches his table, Ben looks up, ready to speak in his usual authoritative tone. But Rose surprises him. She meets his gaze directly, unflinching, and her presence disarms him in a way he doesn't understand. "What can I get for you?" she asks with a friendly smile, setting down a small notepad. Ben orders a black coffee, but in the process, he fumbles his words slightly, something unusual for him. Without missing a beat, Rose gently corrects him, her tone polite but firm. Her straightforwardness catches him off guard. He's used to people tiptoeing around him, either out of fear or deference, but Rose treats him like any other customer. Their brief interaction leaves a mark on Ben. There's something about Rose that feels different. her honesty, her calm confidence, and the way she seems so at ease in her own skin. It stirs something within him, a feeling he hasn't experienced in years: curiosity. As he sips his coffee and watches Rose go about her work, he finds himself wondering about her life. What drives her? What stories lie behind her tired but kind eyes? For the first time in a long while, Ben feels a flicker of interest in someone beyond himself. When he leaves the cafe, he notices that the weight of his loneliness has lightened, if only slightly. But as he gets back into his car, a new thought forms in his mind. He wants to see Rose again, not just as a passing stranger, but as someone he could get to know. Ben drives away. A small but significant shift takes place in his heart. For a man who has lived behind walls, both physical and emotional, Rose has sparked the first crack in his armor. Ben couldn't stop thinking about Rose after their encounter at the cafe. Her calm confidence and honest demeanor had stayed with him, cutting through the haze of his loneliness. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, refreshingly real in a world where people often treated him with either awe or envy because of his wealth. The idea of seeing her again started to grow in his mind, but this time, he wanted to do more than just share a brief conversation. The following morning, Ben returned to the cafe. The air inside was just as welcoming as before, but this time, Rose was cleaning the tables, her movements deliberate but unhurried. When she saw him walk in, her eyebrows lifted in recognition, and she offered him the same warm smile as before. "Back for more coffee?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of teasing. Ben smiled faintly. "Not exactly," he replied, his tone unusually hesitant for a man accustomed to control. Rose tilted her head, curious but cautious. "What brings you back, then?" Ben gestured to a table near the counter. "Could we talk for a moment?" She hesitated, glancing at the clock to make sure she wasn't neglecting her other customers, then nodded. "Give me a second." She grabbed a towel, wiped her hands, and sat down across from him, folding her arms in a way that was both casual and guarded. Ben leaned forward slightly, as though the act of making himself vulnerable required a physical effort. "I have a proposition for you," he began, carefully choosing his words. "I know this might sound unusual, but I'd like to offer you a job." Rose blinked, clearly surprised. "A job? Doing what?" "At my home," Ben said. "It's a large place, and I could use someone to help with organization, maintenance, and maybe even hospitality." Rose's expression shifted, her skepticism evident. "You're telling me you want to hire a waitress to organize your mansion? Seems a little odd, don't you think?" Ben chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "I know how it sounds, but let's just say I see something in you, something rare. Your work ethic, your straightforwardness. I think you'd bring something valuable to my life and my home." Rose studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly. She had met all kinds of people in her years working at the cafe, and her instincts were usually spot on. While Ben didn't come across as insincere, his offer seemed out of place, like there was something he wasn't saying. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You could hire anyone with your resources. Why walk into a small cafe and offer this to a single mom who's just trying to make ends meet?" Ben hesitated, caught off guard by her directness. "Because I need someone who isn't just looking for a paycheck. Someone who's grounded, who knows what it means to work hard for something. And frankly, someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong." Rose raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "This sounds more like a personal project than a professional one." He leaned back, letting out a small sigh. "Maybe it is," he admitted. "I'm not perfect, and I don't pretend to be. But I think you could help me change that. Help me see the world differently." Her gaze softened, though she remained guarded. "I don't know, Ben. I've got my son to think about. I can't just pack up and start working for someone I barely know." "That's fair," he said quickly, his tone earnest. "I don't want to take you away from your son. In fact, I'd accommodate whatever you need to make this work. I can pay you more than you're making here, give you flexible hours, even provide a place for you both if you ever needed it." Rose sat quietly for a moment, her fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the table. She could feel his sincerity, but she couldn't ignore the risks. She had built a life of careful choices, one that protected her son from unnecessary uncertainty. Yet something about Ben intrigued her. Beneath his polished exterior was a man who seemed lost, but not irredeemable. "I'll think about it," she finally said, standing up and grabbing her towel. "But no promises." Ben nodded, a small flicker of hope lighting in his eyes. "That's all I ask." As she walked away to tend to another customer, Ben felt a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. He had taken the first step toward something new, something that felt less like an escape and more like a possibility for connection. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope that life could hold more than wealth and isolation. Rose eventually agreed to Ben's proposition, though not without reservations. She had taken time to weigh the risks. Moving into a stranger's world of wealth and luxury felt foreign, even intimidating. But something about Ben's earnestness and vulnerability had convinced her to give him a chance. She wasn't sure if she trusted him completely, but she knew she could handle herself. After all, she had spent years navigating life as a single mother with no safety net. When Rose and her son, Liam, arrived at Ben's mansion, they were both awestruck. The estate was more magnificent than she had imagined. A sprawling, grandiose structure surrounded by manicured gardens and fountains. The interior was equally stunning, filled with luxurious furniture, expensive artwork, and a quiet stillness that seemed to amplify every sound. Yet for all its beauty, Rose immediately sensed the emptiness in the space. It felt more like a museum than a home. Ben greeted them at the entrance, looking slightly nervous but trying to appear composed. He bent down to Liam's level, offering a friendly smile. "Hi, Liam. I'm Ben," he said. Liam, clutching his mother's hand tightly, stared at him with wide eyes. "You live here?" the boy asked, his voice filled with awe. Ben chuckled softly. "I do. But it doesn't feel as nice as it looks. Maybe you and your mom can help me fix that." Rose appreciated the effort Ben made to connect with her son. Though Liam was naturally shy around strangers, there was something about Ben's gentle demeanor that seemed to put him at ease. Rose's role at the mansion was flexible but challenging. She began organizing the chaotic household, taking charge of everything from redecorating the lifeless rooms to managing the staff, who were used to following instructions but had lacked direction for years. Her no-nonsense approach earned her their respect quickly. Rose also added small, personal touches. A vase of fresh flowers on the dining table, colorful throw pillows in the sitting room. That slowly transformed the mansion from a cold, sterile space into a more welcoming environment. Meanwhile, Liam brought life to the house in a way Ben hadn't anticipated. The boy's laughter echoed through the halls as he explored the sprawling estate, asking endless questions about the artwork, the furniture, and even the fountain in the garden. His curiosity was infectious, and Ben found himself answering questions he hadn't thought about in years. As the days turned into weeks, Rose and Ben grew more comfortable with each other. Their conversations, which had started as polite exchanges, became deeper and more personal. Ben would often join Rose in the kitchen as she prepared meals for Liam, finding solace in the simplicity of the moment. One evening, as they stood in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, Rose noticed Ben staring at a framed photograph on the wall. It was a picture of a young Ben with his parents, who looked proud and happy. "That was taken when I was about 10, Ben said, his voice distant. "Back when the house actually felt alive." Rose placed a hand on the counter, hesitating before speaking. "What happened?" Ben sighed. "They passed away when I was in my 20s. After that, it was just me. I poured everything into work, thinking it would fill the void. But it never did." Rose looked at him thoughtfully. "Money can't replace people, Ben. It can't fill the spaces they leave behind." Her words lingered in the air, and for the first time, Ben felt like someone truly understood his pain. One afternoon, Ben found himself sitting in the garden, watching Liam chase butterflies near the fountain. Rose joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "You're good with him," she said, breaking the silence. "Liam likes you." Ben smiled faintly. "I didn't think I'd be good with kids. I've spent so much of my life disconnected." Rose tilted her head, studying him. "You're doing better than you think. Sometimes it's not about being perfect, it's about showing up." Her words struck a chord in Ben. For years, he had believed that his inability to have children made him less of a man, but Rose's perspective was slowly shifting that belief. He realized that being a father, or even just a positive influence in someone's life, was about more than biology. As Rose and Liam continued to settle into their new life, the mansion began to transform, not just physically but emotionally. For the first time in years, the house felt warm and alive. The laughter of a child, the smell of home-cooked meals, and the sound of genuine conversation began to fill the once silent halls. Ben found himself looking forward to each day, eager to learn more about Rose and to spend time with Liam. Though he couldn't articulate it yet, he began to realize that Rose and her son had brought something into his life he hadn't even known he was missing. hope. Life at the mansion settled into a comfortable rhythm. Rose's straightforwardness and practicality balanced Ben's reserved, introspective nature. Liam's innocent laughter and boundless curiosity continued to melt the icy silence that had once defined the house. For the first time in years, Ben felt as though he was part of something meaningful, even if he couldn't yet define it. But the peace was fragile, and the truth often has a way of surfacing when least expected. One evening, after dinner, Rose and Ben sat in the living room while Liam played with a set of wooden blocks on the floor. The fire crackled softly, casting a warm glow over the room. The air was calm, but Ben could sense that Rose was distracted. She kept glancing at Liam, her hands nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. "You seem restless," Ben remarked, setting down his glass of wine. "Is something bothering you?" Rose hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben leaned forward, his brow furrowing with concern. "What is it?" Rose took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on Liam as he stacked the blocks with careful precision. "This job, moving into your house, it wasn't just about money or convenience for me. It was about giving Liam the life he deserves. But there's something you need to know, something I've kept hidden." Ben's heart began to race, his mind scrambling to predict what she might say. "Go on," he urged gently. Rose turned to face him, her gaze steady but filled with emotion. "Ben, Liam is your son." The words hung in the air, heavy and electric. For a moment, Ben was stunned into silence. He stared at Rose, his mind reeling. What do you mean?" he asked, his voice shaky. Rose took another deep breath, bracing herself. "It was years ago. I used to work as a housekeeper at one of your vacation homes. We had a brief connection one night. I didn't think much of it at the time. Figured I was just another face in the crowd for you. But then I found out I was pregnant." Ben's mind flashed back to those years, a blur of work trips and fleeting relationships, none of which had ever felt significant. He couldn't recall Rose specifically, but the sincerity in her voice told him she was telling the truth. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, a mix of confusion and hurt in his tone. Rose's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Because I didn't think you'd care. Back then you were so consumed by your work, your image. I figured you wouldn't want the responsibility, or the scandal. So I decided to raise him on my own. But when you walked into that cafe, I thought maybe it was time for you to know." Ben sat back, his head spinning. The idea of being a father, of having a child he never knew about, was overwhelming. His entire life, he had carried the belief that he could never have children. Now, faced with the truth, he didn't know whether to feel anger, betrayal, or gratitude. He glanced at Liam, who was oblivious to the emotional storm brewing between the adults. The boy's small hands carefully balanced a tower of blocks, his face lighting up with pride when it didn't topple over. "That's my son," Ben whispered, his voice barely audible. Rose nodded. "Yes, and he doesn't know who you are, not yet. I wanted to be sure you were ready before I told him." Ben's eyes filled with tears as he continued to watch Liam. He saw pieces of himself in the boy, the same sharp concentration, the same quiet determination. It was undeniable. The hours that followed were a blur. Rose gave Ben space to process the revelation, retreating to her room with Liam after their conversation. Alone in the living room, Ben grappled with the enormity of the situation. The walls of his mansion, once symbols of his isolation, now seemed to pulse with new life and responsibility. He thought about all the years he had wasted believing he would never have a family. And now, here it was, right in front of him. But the revelation also brought fear. Could he be the father Liam deserved? Did he even know how to parent, after spending so much of his life focused on wealth and status? The next morning, Ben found Liam in the garden, chasing butterflies as he often did. Rose stood nearby, watching him with a soft smile. When she noticed Ben approaching, her smile faltered, replaced by nervousness. "I've been thinking," Ben said, his voice calm but firm. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't even know if I'll be any good at it. But I want to try. I want to be in his life." Rose's eyes filled with relief and gratitude. "That's all I ever wanted, Ben, for you to try." As Liam ran up to show them the butterfly he had caught, Ben knelt down to his level, his heart swelling with a mix of fear and love. "Hey, Liam," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Can I tell you something? I'd like to be your friend. Maybe even something more." Liam looked at him curiously, then smiled. "Like a dad." Ben's throat tightened, but he nodded. "Yeah, like a dad." The revelation had shaken Ben to his core, but it also opened a door he never thought he'd walk through. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt a spark of purpose and hope. The chapter closes with Ben, Rose, and Liam standing together in the garden. A family in the making, bound by an unexpected truth and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Ben's life had shifted overnight. The revelation that Liam was his son consumed his every thought, and with it came a flood of conflicting emotions: joy, guilt, fear, and hope. For years, he had lived under the shadow of believing he would never have children. Now, not only did he have a son, but the boy had been growing up right under his nose, without his knowledge. Fatherhood wasn't something Ben had ever prepared for, and stepping into the role was daunting. Could he make up for lost time? Would Liam accept him as a father? And perhaps most frightening of all, would he be good enough for Liam? Ben was determined to start small. He didn't want to overwhelm Liam or force their relationship. Instead, he decided to ease into fatherhood by simply being present. He began joining Liam in the garden, watching as the boy played or explored. He would ask Liam about his favorite things, books, animals, colors, and was surprised by the child's enthusiasm. Liam spoke about dinosaurs with a passion that was infectious, and Ben found himself eagerly listening to every fact and story. One day, Liam asked, "Do you like dinosaurs too?" Ben hesitated, then smiled. "I didn't know much about them before, but I think I do now. Maybe you can teach me more." Liam's face lit up with excitement. "I can show you my dinosaur book. It has all the names." That afternoon, they spent hours flipping through the pages of Liam's well-worn book, Liam eagerly explaining the difference between a triceratops and a stegosaurus. For Ben, it was a small but meaningful step, a moment of connection he hadn't known he was capable of. Despite these small victories, Ben couldn't shake the guilt that lingered in his heart. He couldn't stop thinking about the years he had missed. The first words, the first steps, the milestones he would never get back. One evening, he confided in Rose as they cleaned up after dinner. "I can't stop feeling like I failed him," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I missed so much of his life. How do I make up for that?" Rose placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Ben, you can't change the past. But Liam doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to show up now. Every day. That's what matters to him." Her words gave him a sense of clarity. He realized that while he couldn't undo the past, he had the power to shape the future. Of course, not every moment was smooth. Liam, though naturally cheerful, had his moments of hesitation. He didn't fully understand who Ben was to him yet, and sometimes he would shy away or cling to Rose when Ben tried to bond with him. One such moment happened during a rainy afternoon. Ben had invited Liam to play a board game in the living room, but the boy hesitated, looking to Rose for reassurance. "It's okay, sweetheart," Rose said gently. "Go play with Ben. I'll be right here." Liam nodded slowly and joined Ben, though he remained quiet at first. As the game progressed, Ben made an effort to keep the mood light, cracking jokes and letting Liam win a few rounds. By the end of the afternoon, Liam was laughing, his initial shyness forgotten. For Ben, it was a reminder that fatherhood wasn't always easy, but the rewards were worth the effort. As the weeks passed, Liam's trust in Ben grew. The boy began seeking him out, not just for games, but for advice and comfort. One night, after a bad dream, Liam wandered into Ben's study, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. "Can I stay with you for a bit?" Liam asked, his voice small. Ben's heart ached with a mix of sadness and pride. "Of course," he said, scooping Liam up and settling him on the couch. They spent the rest of the night talking softly until Liam fell asleep in his arms. Moments like these reaffirmed Ben's determination to be the father Liam deserved. Fatherhood didn't just change Ben's relationship with Liam, it changed him as a person. He found himself reevaluating his priorities. Work, once his sole focus, began to take a back seat. He started spending more time at home, joining Rose and Liam for meals, helping with household tasks, and even taking an active role in the mansion's transformation. For the first time, he felt like his life had purpose beyond wealth and success. The love and connection he felt with Liam, and even with Rose, filled a void he hadn't known how to address before. The chapter culminates in a pivotal moment. One evening, Ben and Liam sat under the stars in the garden, a telescope set up between them. Liam was eagerly pointing out constellations he had learned about in school, while Ben listened with fascination. "Do you think the stars ever get lonely?" Liam asked suddenly, his voice thoughtful. Ben paused, taken aback by the question. "Maybe," he said slowly. But I think the stars are happier when they're surrounded by other stars. Just like people. Liam turned to him, his small face serious. I'm glad I have you, Ben. The words hit Ben like a tidal wave, and he felt tears sting his eyes. I'm glad I have you too, Liam, he said softly, pulling the boy into a hug. In that moment, Ben realized that fatherhood wasn't just about filling Liam's life. It was about filling his own. Liam had given him a sense of belonging and love he had never experienced before. Ben's journey into fatherhood begins with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. While he is eager to embrace his newfound role, he is acutely aware of his lack of experience with children. Rose, recognizing his earnest efforts, guides him patiently, offering reassurance when self-doubt threatens to overwhelm him. Rose and Ben's relationship also deepens, evolving from a connection built on mutual respect to one of profound love. Ben cherishes Rose's unwavering strength and compassion, while Rose admires Ben's transformation from a guarded businessman to a nurturing father and partner. Together, they create a household grounded in shared values and genuine affection. One poignant moment occurs when Ben presents Rose with a heartfelt gift, a photo album capturing their journey as a family. Each page reflects the milestones they've achieved together. The children's birthdays, family picnics, and even the small, everyday joys that have come to define their lives. Rose, moved to tears, realizes that Ben has not only embraced fatherhood, but also the life they've built together. The once empty mansion now overflows with life and laughter. Weekends are filled with family movie nights, board games, and impromptu dance parties in the grand hall. The garden, once a neglected patch of land, flourishes with vibrant blooms and a small vegetable patch. The staff, once formal and distant, become part of the family, their roles shifting from employees to cherished companions. Ben and Rose host gatherings and charity events, opening their doors to friends and neighbors. The mansion, once a fortress of solitude, becomes a hub of connection and joy, a testament to the power of love and unity. As the story draws to a close, Ben reflects on the profound changes in his life. He realizes that his true legacy lies not in the wealth he has amassed, but in the love he has cultivated. The family gathered around a bonfire in the garden, their faces illuminated by the warm glow. As they share stories and laughter, Ben feels a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, he truly understands the meaning of happiness, a life rich with love, purpose, and the simple yet profound joys of family. Ben's journey comes full circle, from a man defined by his loneliness to one whose life is enriched by the family he never thought he'd have. The mansion stands not as a monument to his wealth, but as a vibrant home filled with love, laughter, and hope, a legacy of love that will endure for generations. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Turn on your notification for my next video.